Good evening and welcome to the Awareness Magazine TV show. Tonight on our show we have Maureen St. Germain, who has been with us before, so we're honored to have her back on the show this evening. Maureen is an internationally well-known speaker and author. She is also a channel. She teaches channeling so one can find their higher self and wisdom. So we're honored to have her back on the show. Welcome, Maureen.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure, and I look forward to sharing some of this knowledge.
Absolutely, yes. So you have a new book out, and it is called Waking Up in 5D.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. So I imagine everybody wants to know what 5D is.
Yes, we do.
5D is what all the traditional religions would teach us is heaven. So it's where our relationships are good, and we feel connected enough to the divine that we know what to do, and we're still inspired, we're still creative. But some choices have fallen off the table. So the choices that would lead us away from a sweet life or a life that's compassionate towards others and ourselves is appealing to us. So we don't choose those things. Just like in heaven, you wouldn't choose to talk trash about your neighbor. In heaven, you're going to find your neighbor and say nice things to them. And I'm kind of making that up, but think about what would your behavior be in heaven? And that's 5D.
Okay.
So why do I say waking up in 5D? Well, first of all, a lot of people are talking about the fifth dimension, and that's what 5D stands for, the fifth dimension. And think of that old song from 20, 30 years ago? This is the dawning of the age Aquarius. And what was the name of the group? The Fifth Dimension.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so when you start to think of the words of that song, where harmony and love rule the planet, well, we're finally getting there.
Good. About time.
So what the book is about is how to be proactive in achieving that. I grew up in business. I came of age in the corporate world, and one of the things that I really hooked onto was this whole idea of being proactive instead of reactive. Proactive says, if it might rain today, you better carry an umbrella. Reactive says, we better buy an umbrella on the street. It's raining hard on us. And so you have to buy the umbrella and pay the high price, you see. Mm-hmm. So I'm at a place where I figured out that we could actually turn on certain behaviors, make certain choices in our language, in our awareness, and our possibilities that allow us to perceive the world around us in a way that we hadn't perceived it before. A lot of times things happen to people and they go, oh, well, that was weird. And then they forget about it. Mm-hmm. But what if you had a way to frame it and a way to understand things? And I'll give you an example. One day I was in my car. My son was driving. I was in the front seat, and it was a van, and it started making a weird noise. And I said out loud, what's going on with the van? And out of my mouth came the word something about the fan belt and blah, blah, blah. I don't even know. I don't know anything about cars. Other
right.
than you have to get the oil changed, and you have to have good tires with good treads. It has to do with a penny or something.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay, so that's the extent of my knowledge there, right? And for these words to come out of my mouth, to know what it was, I burst out laughing. And I asked in meditation, how did I know that? How come when I ask other questions they don't get answers, and I ask this, what I think is kind of an unimportant, stupid question. Of course, it was important in the moment.
At the time.
How come I got that answer? And I wasn't really expecting that answer. I was just, ruminating out loud, like, the car's making a noise, I'm scared, kind of a noise, question. And what my guidance was, you asked the what question. So when we ask who, when we ask when, why, or how, all these interview questions, we're looking to follow the path down to the narrow piece so we can solve it.
Okay.
Who ate the cookies? Why are the cookies gone? When were the cookies eaten? Then they're not going to eat dinner. All those questions are so I can solve the problem. But when I say what's going on, I'm actually asking kind of a wider question, and the universe answered. Now, I was lucky. When I was a child growing up, my parents always had discussion at the dinner table. And when I was growing up, we had encyclopedias. So we had a set of encyclopedias, and whenever we would come up with some brilliant thing, my father would say, well, prove it. And then he'd say, the encyclopedia's over there. And so he would encourage us to look things up and to find answers. But what it did is it also said, ideas will be tolerated here. And I think that part of my upbringing helped me to be open to hear the answer, so that when the answer floated in and came out of my mouth like that, even I was surprised.
You know, that's interesting about the encyclopedias, because when I was about 8 years old, I got a gift that came to the house from my grandmother. And it was just a gift. It wasn't Christmas or my birthday. And she never, did that unless it was Christmas or her birthday and we got together. And so I thought, oh, this is neat. And it was a set of brand new encyclopedias. And I was 8 years old.
Wow.
And I was so flattered. I guess I didn't really know the term as
You
an
were
8-year-old.
thrilled.
I was thrilled and excited, and it was so special to me, and I still have those. So when you said that, I was
so
like, wow,
cute
that was
memory.
like, yeah.
And did you use them?
Yes, I did.
Exactly.
I used them. I used them with schoolwork. I used them if I had a question or I wanted to look up a country or a person. Yeah, I did use them.
Yeah.
And it meant so much to me that she just shipped them to me one day out of the blue, and it was amazing. So when you said that, it was like, oh yeah, it's nice.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, every household should have a set.
Well, we do. We have the internet.
Yeah, that's
We have
true.
the internet. So, when you go back to the idea of who, what, when, where, why, or how, and you single out the what word, and you start asking what's going on, I wonder what just happened. You see a flash of light that makes no sense, or something unusual happens when you're sitting in a traffic light, or you put something down and then you go to pick it up and it's gone. And instead of saying, that's weird, I just put it there, you could say, I wonder what's going on. Mm-hmm. And that's how I knew that I was going into the fifth dimension myself. Because that had not occurred to me. I thought, well, we're all going to be fifth dimensional someday. Mm-hmm. We're all going to have this magical event, whatever it is, and we're all going to be 5D. So when my stuff started disappearing, and I was being told it was in a higher dimension, because I'd always say, where? Remember, that's not the word to use.
Okay.
Where did my stuff go? Because I have 4 kids, and whenever anything was disappeared, when anything was gone, I would always figure, well, the kids took it. They could take the scissors or whatever, from the kitchen. I need it now, so where is it? But this time I said, what's going on? And when I said that and I was told I was in a higher dimension when I put it down, that's when I began to realize. Because I thought my stuff was going into a higher dimension ahead. Kind of like monkeys in space. Well, send the monkeys up, see if they come back alive. And I'm being funny here to make a point, because I thought that's what was happening to my stuff, because I was getting the message that my stuff was in a higher dimension. I just didn't know that it was me that had put it there. And so when I discovered that, then I had a couple of other incidents that kind of validated it that I can share. But what was so critical to me is that when I heard the concept that I was the one that was putting it down, that's when I began to realize that the dimensions are nested like Russian dolls. And so from third dimension, you can't see up to fifth. But if you're in fifth, you could actually see into third and think you are in third, even when you're not. And another thing that's really amazing is that the experience of becoming fifth dimensional doesn't happen all at once. And it's not like getting a driver's license. So it's not like once you get a driver's license, you can drive anytime you want. It's more like having to borrow someone's car to go somewhere. So you always have to make an effort to have a car, either to make a car payment or borrow a car. It's never a presumed privilege. And so what the book is how can you be proactive and be fifth dimensional more often? And the idea is then you'll have more 5D experiences, which are very fun and wonderful.
How interesting. That is very interesting. And so the title of the book, how did you come up with that title?
That came to me in meditation.
Came to in the Merkaba meditation that we talked about
Yes,
at the other
yes. I was,
interview?
yeah. In a meditation, I was just told this is the name of the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so humanity is shifting into 5D, and everyone probably will be there at a different time, or will it all happen at once? How do you see it? How is this happening?
I personally see that it's going to be a slow process until we hit critical mass.
Okay.
And like a teeter-totter, once we hit critical mass, then everybody's going to move in that direction, and it's going to be like the new normal. But, you know, I want to emphasize, we don't go to 5D and stay there. I don't go,
Okay.
I'm not always 5D, you know. Somebody
Okay.
pushes my buttons, I'll slide back down to 3D if I respond, if I react to it, you know.
Okay.
You know, and the people closest to us are the ones that push our buttons, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping that in mind, you know, it's a little bit like growing up. When we're teenagers, we do really mature things and our parents are pleased, and then we do something stupid and they think, what happened? They were just acting so mature a minute ago. And that's us, you know, that's how we're going to become 5D. And then, you know, like the book, The Tipping Point, we're going to hit a point where everybody is sliding into 5D frequently enough that we're just going to one day just not go back.
That'll be wonderful.
That's my take.
Okay. Okay, so, and the idea for the book came to you. How did you end up writing this book?
Well, you know, as a author, initially I was afraid to write books. And I thought, well, I'm not afraid to teach people things. I'm not afraid to speak in front of an audience. So I'll use that as my place to start. And so early on, I began the habit of keeping journals. So I would write what was going on in the classes. I would write what I was learning, because as a teacher, you know, every teacher will tell you this, that they learn as they teach. So even though they're
Right.
acquiring skills, they're going to take continuing education and they're wanting to better themselves, then when they go and teach, they see what works and what doesn't. And so then they learn also from the classroom itself.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And have you seen any of your students go into 5D? Because I know you have different students.
Yeah, I did. And it was a very interesting experience. And this was quite remarkable. I've seen it happen a couple of times, but this was something very specific that I'll give you the example. I was in Taiwan.
Okay.
I was giving an Akashic Records reading, and you can ask me about what that is later, but it's a way to tap into the library of all that is, kind of like having access to the Library of Congress, only it's the Library of Congress for you. And helping this client with some issues that she was facing. And in that process, I become a channel for her guides. So I'm sending the words that her guides are giving me to her. I'm saying them out loud. And they said something along the lines of, well, you could be that person right now. You don't have to wait. And she kind of looked at me like she didn't get it. And they repeated it again. And they said, you already are this person. You can simply step into it and claim it. And basically, she was a person that had married up into a very wealthy, prestigious family. Her family had picked her because of her high integrity and her morality. So she was the number one choice, but at the same time, she wasn't used to being able to buy a $500 dress or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, you can do this right now. You claim this right now. And all of a sudden, the room started to rock. Now, we're in Taiwan, right? Taiwan's a place where they have earthquakes, and I've been in earthquakes in Asia. So I knew what it felt like, and I, moving with it. And I turned to my translator, and she nods, and I go, okay, we just kind of communicate that we both noticed it. And then we just keep going. And we finished the reading, and I'm on, like maybe the 27th floor. I'm pretty high up. And that makes the rock pretty substantial.
And scary.
So the client leaves, and I turned to my translator, and I said, go on the internet, quick. Tell me when that earthquake hit. And she didn't say there wasn't any earthquake. She says, okay. So she goes on, and she says, no earthquake. And I
That's
said,
bizarre.
"Did you see the room move?" And she said, "Yes, I did." So we literally saw like a wave in the room, and for us, the room moved. That was the client going 5D, claiming, I'll call it, the goddess, or claiming the opportunity to be the mistress of the new kingdom that she was ruling, if you will. When she claimed it, the rooms pitched and swayed, but she didn't see it because she was in it. It was only the two of us who were sitting outside, but connected to her, that we observed it.
How interesting. I've never heard of anything like that before. That's fascinating.
I also saw it with another time when someone, a very prestigious man by the name of Corey Good, and he was in a room. It was the first time he was presenting by himself publicly, and we were at an event in California, and I was in the audience. I was like in row 3, and he proceeds to tell this story about how he had done a mind meld with this high being that he had been interacting with, and there was a lot of energy around the whole idea that she was stooping to converge with him in this way. And she said afterwards, from now on, I'll be connected to you and you'll be connected to me, and you'll be able to feel my thoughts and I'll be able to feel yours. And he told a lot of story around that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, and she also told me who I was. And when he said that, I saw a wave move through the room, just like if you were standing in a wave pool. And I'm looking around going, no one else saw it. I was the only one, but I was in a direct line with him, and I saw it. Interesting.
That is interesting.
Now, here's how an individual might notice 5D. And this is very telling. Aside from having something that you put back where it belongs, and then you go for it and it's not there, and then 2 days later you go looking, you go to get it and it's exactly where it was supposed to be, and you say to yourself, but it wasn't there 2 days ago when I was looking for it. And that's basically what happens is when you start to look for it, you're starting to get anxious, so you drop back into this polarity-based reality. Mm-hmm. When you're back in a place that you're calm and comfortable and you're just, reaching in the drawer, you're not worried about it, and you find it. What can happen to people, and this is something that you should notice in LA because we have traffic here. You're sitting in a traffic light, maybe you're the third car back, the light changes and nobody moves. Nobody starts to cross the street. The cars in front of you don't move, and you're in a good place. You're feeling good about maybe the nice day you're having, and you're not in a rush. So you notice that nobody moves, but then you forget about it because then everybody moves. Mm-hmm. If that happens, you were in 5D, and you actually are seeing 3D before it happens. So one of the qualities of 5D is that you actually are observing the reality before. It's like if you could imagine that you had a film and you could see the frames as they come down into 3D. So as it's going by you in 5D, you're seeing it before the 3Ders get it. Isn't that wild?
That is wild. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. And one man that interviewed me told me that happens to me all the time. Huh. So I know it's pretty common.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
But if you're not used to framing it that way, you would just have that experience and forget about it.
You'd forget about it.
Until someone like me comes along and says, yeah, well, that happens. That means you were 5D in that moment.
And you start noticing it. You start noticing the past when it happened. And very interesting. Yeah.
So I'll bet if you start polling people and ask how many people, when I speak, I ask this question, how many people put something down and then found it 2 days later when they weren't looking for it? 80-90% of my audience will say yes.
Yes. Yeah. We've all done that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Found something when you weren't looking for it. And what tools do you give your students, or when you're giving a lecture? How does one kind of get into 5D? What are the steps? Are they different for each individual?
Well, there's a couple of things. One thing is you learn how to connect with your higher self, which we can talk about in just a minute.
Sure.
And that's, connecting with your own wisdom channel, which we've talked about a little bit. Mm-hmm. But a proactive tool is to notice your language and to consciously decide that you're going to use certain words in these situations instead of the old words. So, like if young people might use the F word a lot because that's common. And at a certain age, they do that, and then they quit because they realize it doesn't work for them, or maybe they realize that the people they're hanging out with now don't use it, so they stop. Mm-hmm. But if you consciously knew certain words would always put you back into polarity, you would stop using them. Mm-hmm. And the number one phrase that people use that puts them in polarity, choosing left or right, is I have to. Think about how many times we say I have to. I have to pick up the kids. I have to meet my husband. I have to go to the studio. I have to go to the dentist. Mm-hmm. I have to go to the grocery store. What if we said, I'm going to the grocery store? Mm-hmm. Or I like picking up my kids on time. I need to leave now. Or my boss needs this report by tomorrow. I'm going to stay up late to get it done. Mm-hmm. The have to doesn't have to be there. And the reason the have to puts you into polarity, because it implies that somebody else has power over me. Mm. And that's the biggest lie we've all faced.
Yes.
Nobody has power over me. Nobody has power over me. And so once you begin to recognize that you have power over you, and we all have choice, we can choose how we respond to situations, and we can choose how we do things. So then I don't use the word good and bad anymore. Mm. Instead, if I like something, I'll say, well, that's a match. I don't say that's the right thing, because that implies there's a wrong thing. Mm. What if I just say, that works for me? So those kinds of words, and I have a whole table that people can look up. Here's a list of words that you can use to replace the old words. So that's one way you can be proactive. Another way is to connect with your higher self, and if you want to give me a few minutes, I'll talk it through.
Absolutely, yes.
So the way you connect with your higher self, or your inner wisdom channel, whatever you want to call it, is to go through a 6 weeks practice period. And the practice period is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be playful. And if you can't do it and be playful, then you're not doing it right. So that's the first rule. It's not really a rule, but it's your approach. Okay. But you agree to do it for 6 weeks. You agree to ask only yes/no questions. You do a little meditation where you close your eyes and you ask your higher self to move into your heart, and you ask your higher self, give me a symbol or signal for yes and no and neutral. And you ask each one, and you give yourself some space between each one. Now, 80% of the people that I teach this to will get something. They'll either get a color, they'll get a picture, maybe a visual, thumbs up, thumbs down, a shape. They might feel it in their body, like an itchy ear, or a pit in their stomach for no, or a sweet feeling for yes, or that yummy feeling we sometimes get in our heart when we feel good about something. So there's something that they're able to identify, and it's either a body sensation or a feeling that feels like a body sensation even if it's not, or something visual or something tangible like a taste in your mouth or something that goes on in your body. Okay, so now you have your signals. And now you play. And you remember, you're only allowed to ask yes/no questions. You're only allowed to ask about unimportant stuff. Okay. And if you really have a taste for something, just do it. So if you're looking at cookies and you really want to have one, don't ask your higher self. Just enjoy a cookie. But you got to be playful. So you can't ask predictive questions. And you only ask about yourself. You don't ask, is so-and-so going to do such and such, because then that's predictive. Mm-hmm. You don't ask, is it going to rain, because that's predictive, but it's also not about you. Instead, you ask, do I need to carry an umbrella? You see, is it my highest and best good to carry an umbrella today? One time I actually carried an umbrella all day long. It didn't rain on me, but I did trip and fall. And I when I was picking the umbrella, I guessed the second time, which umbrella? The compressed one or the cane one? No, take the cane one. And that cane helped me from falling to the ground. Very interesting.
So you did need it,
I
just not
did
for
need
the
it,
rain.
but not for what I thought I needed. Exactly. So you ask about actions you're taking, and you ask 30 or 40 times a day. And you're not allowed to use any other forms of divination. So no pendulums, no muscle testing, no cards, none of that. You leave all that alone, but just for 6 weeks. Now, the first thing people ask me is, well, can I go back to that stuff after my 6 weeks? And my answer is, well, you can, but you won't want to. And then they say, well, if you only have to follow through on the 6 weeks, what if I don't want to follow through after my 6 weeks? And the answer is, yeah, but you'll only do that once, because you'll figure out your higher self is right. Now, how are we doing time-wise?
We're doing good. We have about another 3 minutes.
Okay, so I want to explain some more on this, because One of the things that people often misunderstand is they think that they're going to get a certain answer. So, for example, one of the ladies in a class was a vegetarian. And she's at breakfast one morning and she asks her higher self if she should eat meat. Now, she's pretty sure that her higher self will tell her no because she doesn't eat meat. Okay, so she's like committed to this vegetarian diet or this vegan diet. Okay, and her higher self says yes. Now, she comes to my class and says, why did that happen? And I said, because your higher self is playing with you and trying to teach you that if you ask, you have to follow through. You didn't follow through. So it's to help you remember that if you ask the question, you're supposed to follow through. So if you ask, is it okay for me to eat, or is it my highest best good to have a piece of meat? Then you better follow through and have it. And if you're not willing to do it, don't ask.
Don't ask the question.
Exactly. So you do this for 6 weeks. Now, how do people decide things? People decide things by their history. So you use your experience. You use your friend's experience. You research it on the internet or other places. You might have a desire. That desire is still based on history because you saw that cool car. It's still your history. So you got all this history that's helping you make your decision, right? So when you play for 6 weeks, what happens is, let's say you ask your higher self about a restaurant, you show up at the restaurant, some cool person that you wanted to meet shows up. That's awesome. You ask your higher self, should I make this phone call now? And the person you need to reach is right there, ready to talk to you. And so you start asking your higher self about things that you don't care about. And then you get some amazing results. So after 6 weeks, you've got a new set of history. And your new history is that your higher self is always right. And that inspires you to know that your higher self knows what you need to know, even when you don't know you need to know. Just like the time that I was told not to buy an airline ticket for September 11, 2001, and to fly home the day before.
Wow. So you were warned.
I didn't ask. You see,
I
had this full class. I had 60 people, 30 people in each class. I wanted to stay an extra day and hang out with some friends, go to some museums, do whatever. I made the plans. And then when I went to buy the airline ticket, I couldn't bring myself to buy the airline ticket. And the way to explain this feeling is to say, you know how when you play the game of Monopoly and you get the card that says go directly to jail, do not collect $200? That sinking feeling, and that was my no signal in the moment. So I asked, what am I to do? And I got, go home right away. So I was on the very first plane I could get on immediately after the class. And someone said to me, they said, well, why aren't you staying? And I said, I have no idea. I just know I need to be home. Maybe one of my kids will need me. Maybe there's going to be an important phone call I'm going to get. I just don't know.
But you had that answer. And on that note, we are out of time, but thank you so much for being on the show again. It was a pleasure, and thank you for all the information, and it's great for our viewers and anyone interested in 5D and your new book, which is entitled Waking Up in 5D.
Thank you so much for having me on the awareness program again.
Oh, you're welcome, Maureen. Thank you so much. So this was our guest for the evening, Maureen St. Germain. Thank you, Maureen.